Good evening. I'd like to call the Region 15 Board of Education meeting to order. Could you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Boy, this sounds funny. Yeah. Student representatives.
Good evening, everyone. It is a bit weird. The first news of the week is that our fall play, Lockdown, was performed these past 2 weekends. The play was about an eclectic group of students who were locked in their school library by mysterious circumstances. And the play was a comedy, but included themes of teamwork, friendship, coping with tragedy, and passing judgments too easily. All the performers and crew were excellent, and their hard work was very apparent. And even our own Mr. Lungarini provided a voiceover for the intercom in the play. And it was a very enjoyable show. Second, French Culture Week was the second week of November, and this is a week put on by the French Honor Society that is filled with fun French trivia, games, and riddles. So riddles were announced over the intercom, and students were invited to submit answers to the riddles during their lunch waves. And winners got candy coming from France and gift cards. And it was an entertaining week, but the main goal of the week was really to educate Pomperaug students on French culture and also raise money for charity. And finally, the Junior Ring Dance is coming up. It will be held on Thursday, December 3rd from 6 to 10 p.m. at the Grand Oak Villa. And this is a fun, formal dance for the junior class to get together and receive class rings. And now on to Nick.
All of our fall sports teams' regular seasons are finished except for football, which has a game on Thursday at 10 a.m. at Notre Dame of Fairfield. All of our teams except for football also qualified for postseason action. A quick update on advisory. Last week, students were presented a challenge from SMART to come up with a creative Be Smart, Don't Start slogan. Each grade level has the opportunity to win a pizza party by coming up with the most creative slogan. At another session, Officer Betty and Mr. Lungarini spoke to our students about the variety of resources available to them. It included student supports for academic, social, and emotional goals and adversities. Examples included teachers, peers, guidance, and the maid office. The goal is to help achieve, they're available to help achieve goals and also available when students are facing a hard time. And just a quick reminder that on Wednesday, we will be dedicating to creating an inclusive community at Pomperaug, and various activities are planned. Thank you and have a nice Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Any questions of student representatives? Okay, there being none. Happy Thanksgiving to you too.
Madam Chair, for our next item on the agenda, this past week it was my honor and my privilege to introduce 6 of the finest students here in Region 15. They have received the Litchfield County Superintendents Association Superintendent's Award. They were duly feted at a lovely dinner this past week, and it is my pleasure to introduce them individually to the board and to our television audience as well. So I will do that from the podium. Students, I will ask you as I call your name to please come up. Do not be embarrassed. Come stand right next to me, and I will tell the entire audience about the wonderful things you have done to be deserving of this fine award. Once we are finished, we'll all be standing up there in a line. I will then invite the students to come and to come right down the line and to shake the hands of all the board members. I'm sure you would want to congratulate them personally, okay? Okay, the Litchfield County Superintendent's Award recognizes students who have served their schools and communities with good scholastic progress, with leadership, and with service. So it is a distinct honor and privilege to introduce to you these 6 fine students from Region 15. First, from Memorial Middle School, Kira McNerney. Kira, please come on up. Kira is a leader, scholar, and athlete, thanks to her consistent effort and natural talents. She has earned high honors in 6th and 7th grade, and she has received 7 academic certificates of excellence. Kira participates in band, soccer, and she sells tickets at school events. She is co-president in student government and has raised money for the St. Jude Foundation and the Wounded Warrior Project. Kira volunteers for the Top Soccer Organization, which works with special education students, and she helps fundraise money for the Jimmy Fund for children with cancer and for diabetes research. And she was recently appointed to the Estrellas Spanish Honor Society. I introduce you to Kira McNerney. Max Bueno. Max, I'm going to ask you to come and stand on this side. Beautiful. Max is a top student at Memorial Middle School. He has received the Memorial Middle School Amar Viswanath Award for his profound positive impact on students and staff. Max has served as the science lab technician, leading tours for 5th grade orientation as well. He plays soccer and baseball. Max is actively involved in our student government and our drama club. He participates in Middlebury soccer, Watertown baseball, Middlebury basketball, and baseball. Max has earned his black belt in karate. He takes drum lessons, and he has participated in the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge. Max was also recently accepted to the Estrellas Spanish Honor Society. Congratulations to you, Max. From Rochambeau Middle School, Erin Farrell. Erin is a top student at Rochambeau Middle School, earning high honors in all academic classes. Her favorite subject is history, and she told me she likes to build theories to learn from history to guide government in the future. Her leadership skills are evident in her work as a peer tutor, student council, and as a Middle Link member, and she is also first chair in band, where she plays the French horn. In addition, Erin is a member of Tri-M, and she sings in the chorus. Her leadership ability extends to the wider community, where she is a Girl Scout. Erin is organizing multiple fundraisers to help underprivileged children, and her most recent effort has been providing school supplies to kindergarten children in Waterbury for their use at home. Erin, congratulations to you. Winston Chen. Winston has accomplished much in his 2 years at Rochambeau Middle School, earning A's in all classes and in advancing to the state-level competition in both Math Counts and You Be the Chemist, where he placed 4th in the entire state. Winston is a soccer player for RMS and a member of the Chamber Orchestra. His musical prowess extends to the wider community, where, as an accomplished pianist and violinist, Winston has performed at multiple venues and is a member of the Norwalk Youth Symphony, often chosen as first or second chair. Winston, congratulations to you. From Pomperaug High School, I welcome up to the podium Nick Lucatino. Nick, as you know, is the student representative to our Board of Education. He is an outstanding senior who has selflessly committed himself to enhancing the culture and climate of PHS over the last 4 years. Nick has participated in a variety of service clubs, including student government, Interact, Adopt a Grandparent, and he is publicity coordinator for Big Brother, Big Sister. He is a religious education teacher. Nick is a dependable volunteer who assists our special education students on a daily basis. I have seen him do this work, and I must tell you that it is magical to watch this work in progress. Nicholas, we thank you for making PHS such a special place. And Miss Madison Silva. Madison is a model Pomperog student. Her commitment to a rigorous education is demonstrated by her exceptional performance in a variety of AP classes. Are you ready for this? Macroeconomics, calculus, statistics, and language and composition. Thankfully, Madison, they were not all in 1 year. Madison's leadership skills earned her the role of varsity volleyball team captain. She is a member of the National Honor Society, the Science National Honor Society, the Spanish Honor Society, Future Business Leaders of America, Big Brother, Big Sister, Outreach and Interact, which are both service organizations, and student government. Within the community, Madison is actively involved with March of Dimes, Penguin Plunge, and she also teaches religious education. Madison, we are honored to have you as our student and as an awardee. Congratulations. So, ladies and gentlemen of the Board of Education, I invite these fine students to come forward and to accept your personal congratulations.
Very impressive presentation. Nice looking group of kids and continued success. Okay, approval of minutes. I need a motion to untable the approval of minutes of the October 26th, 2015 special meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Oh,
Aye.
any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, passed. Okay, now I need a motion to approve the minutes of the October 26th special meeting.
Motion to approve the October 26th special meeting.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. I need a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting on November 9th.
Motion to approve the November 9th, 2015 regular meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay. I need a motion for this, to approve the minutes of the special meeting workshop of November 11th.
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we're all set. Information and proposals, Finance and Facilities Committee.
Madam Chair, the Finance Committee met on November 11th. We continue to be updated on special education costs, much of which was unanticipated with the new arrivals and unexpected costs that came after the budget adoption. We currently are dealing with a current shortfall of approximately $300,000, which is being offset by a budget freeze and eliminating expenses where possible in areas that have less impact on the delivery of curriculum. The other budget we are watching carefully is the state of Connecticut and their funding of special education excess cost sharing. This is the state's responsibility to fund special education costs for costs that exceed 4.5 times the per pupil expenditure at 85% of those costs. Due to the recent budget issue in Hartford, the state has reduced their contribution to districts, and last year only provided 77% of the excess costs. The district was recently notified that funding for this year may be reduced to a high 60% number, which would only mean that we will potentially receive less money from the state, forcing us to cover this with local dollars. We will closely monitor this, and the administration is also carefully watching this. And once we know the funding level the state will provide this year, we will advise the board of that number. That's all I had, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Paul. Any questions of Paul?
I just have one question. I know in the past, the special education costs, and particularly the ECS, that sometimes it's a matter of when that reimbursement comes from the state. Is that the case with this, or is this a little different this year?
No, this is a little different. The timing has always been pretty much the same as to when we get the money. Last year, we received only 77% of what used to be 85% of a refund. Now, this year, we're hearing that we won't even get the 77%. We're looking at getting somewhere in the high 60%. So this is absolutely a problem with the state refunding what they promise us they will give us, and then not living up to their promise.
And if we have to make that up, does that come out of the current budget, or is that put into next year's?
No, that comes out of the current budget, so we're constantly looking at the current budget right now. Keith was able to identify some money to help offset that number, but we're still in the hole over $300,000. So the only way we're going to make it up is by watching how we spend money for the rest of this year, and have a very hard freeze and watch all kinds of expenditures and look for ways that we can bring extra money into the budget.
Any other questions? Okay, moving on to policies and curriculum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next PNC meeting was scheduled for Monday, December 7th, and that has been canceled. We're trying to get another date. I'm pretty confident it will be in December, but the one for December 7th is canceled. PNC also met tonight, and one of the items on our agenda was a board policy for breathalyzer use. Also, there's devices called passive alcohol sensors, which are similar to breathalyzers, but aren't, I guess, as invasive. They're just easier to use. So the board, or the PNC, will be sending this policy to the board for a first read on December 7th. So I just want to point that out. That is all, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Other committee reports, PTO advisory? Okay, no report. Board member comments?
Madam Chair.
Sure.
I just wanted to ask about, in our packet, we were notified of a January 26th FOIA workshop with Tom Hennick at 6 o'clock central office, and I just wondered if there was anything in particular that is driving that. Were there requests from board members, or just wondering how that came about?
There have been several, phone calls made to Tom, and he just felt it was prudent for him to come down and clarify a lot of the FOI, questions that we might have to the full board.
By any chance, does he charge for that, or if he offered,
I think it's Keith. I assume it's free.
Also, very common for the FOI to go into municipalities and provide this kind of presentation to towns. So now he's just extending it to the Board of Ed.
Because it wasn't him, but he came 2 years ago to Southbury. I was wondering if we could invite the newly elected people in Southbury and Middlebury to this as well, as they invited us 2 years ago. Maybe it might be nice to reciprocate.
Actually, I know that Southbury's already made plans to have him come into their municipality. But I actually think it's a great idea to have him come to the board too, because we have very specific issues that don't necessarily coincide with those from the towns.
Okay, any other questions? Or comments? Okay. Superintendent's report.
This evening, the board has the personnel report, and I will turn this portion over to Mr. Gussenberg, who will give us an overview of the Region 15 CMT capped science results.
Thank you. Board members, before I begin going through any of the slides, I want to very quickly give you a bit of a history. The state of Connecticut, a couple of years ago, began looking at some new standards that would become the basis of science instruction throughout the state. Those standards took time to finally be approved, and were approved just last month. Every school district, however, knew over the last couple of years that these new standards were coming, that they meant some fairly large changes in the way that we instruct in the area of science, and has begun making some adjustments and changes in program. Due to that, you will, as you begin to look at some of the scores and the numbers on the Connecticut Mastery Test, which is given in grades 5 and 8, and the CAP test, which is given in grade 10, you will begin to see that at the state, at the DERG, and at the school level, the scores have gone down a little bit. The reason for that is simple. This is an old test that is no longer testing the curriculum and the program that the state of Connecticut is urging us to develop. I met with my Education Connection colleagues last week, and around the table, every single assistant superintendent or director of curriculum was stating that they really are downplaying this test. The state of Connecticut, sometime in the next 2 to 3 years, will replace it. In the meantime, we continue to have to give the test. We wanted to report on it because it is one of the standardized tests that our students take. However, I can't stress more that we really can't use this data to really analyze our program or drive our instruction. So with that said, I am presenting the data, and what I have done is I've taken the slides that Kelly Lyman had a year ago, and she had developed 2 slides for each grade level, grade 5, 8, and 11. In the first slide, which I'll show, we have looked at the percent at grade 5 of students who are at goal or above. And we've done that over the last 7 years, with the green bar here being the state of Connecticut, the blue bar being the DERG, and the red bar being Region 15. As I mentioned, you will see some decrease, usually in all of the bars. The percentages generally, as we go through, have not changed dramatically between Region 15 and the DERG, although in some cases we may be slightly below the DERG averages. That is the grade 5 slide that's there. The second slide for grade 5 looks at just those students who scored at the advanced level. And that was something that Kelly had spiked out in the past, and therefore I continued to provide that information. In grade 8, Once
Um,
ag-
s-
yes.
Excuse me.
Sure.
So the percent advanced is the students that scored at the advanced?
That's the percentage of
Category.
students who scored at the advanced level.
And-
So for
and-
instance, in this particular case, 16.7% at the state level scored at advanced, 30.8 at the DERG, 24.4 at grade 5 in Region 15.
And in what one of these years did we start to shift our curriculum?
The curriculum has been shifting over the last couple of years.
Okay.
We still have a fair amount of work to be done. But that's why you'll see it's not just our numbers, but in general, as you look at the scores, you'll see state numbers have decreased and DERG numbers have decreased. The tests, the CMT and the CAP, both tend to focus a lot on factual knowledge. The new state standards do not. They focus very heavily on the process of science. The other piece, which I believe does also affect the grade 5 numbers, is the amount of time and effort that the elementary schools over the last few years have been putting into implementing the new language arts and math curriculum. And therefore, the time that has been devoted to science has been shortened. There is only so much time in the day, and as the new reading curriculum and the new math curriculum have taken more time, the science program has received less at the grade 5 level. That's not true at the middle or the high school, because they're in regular formal courses.
Richard, if I can ask a question.
Sure.
It appears that we may be teaching to the test rather than the science as such. If we were teaching science, wouldn't our grades continue to be solid even though these were older tests? And why I can't understand really why we're dropping down percentage-wise in the number of students that we have that reach goal. Just because we're coming out with new tests eventually, what does that have to do with the old tests? Shouldn't we be just as good on the old tests as we will be on the new forthcoming tests?
Well,
and
Paul,
are we going to teach to the new tests, which tells me then we're teaching to the test rather than teaching the subject?
We're teaching to the standards, and as the standards change, the nature of the instruction changes. So if the old test was designed to assess the old standards, as you begin to move away from that, you often haven't prepared the students quite as much for the particular test. When you say teach to the test, if there's an alignment between the standards, the curriculum, and the assessments, then it works fine. If, however, any of those get out of alignment, then you end up with an assessment that no longer is measuring your program. And that's what's happened here. As the standards have changed and the nature of the science program has changed, but the test has not changed, you're now giving a test which is testing items that are no longer part of your curriculum. And therefore, your scores are going to go down somewhat. You're looking puzzled.
I think I am. It just seems to me like if we could just go ahead and just change the standards, that means we haven't taught to the standards in the beginning, because what we taught in the beginning isn't any good anymore. We're teaching to new standards, and 5 years from now, the state's going to come out and say, well, what we're teaching now isn't any good. We're going to go to another new standard, and we'll keep our grades where they are. I get confused when I read about how the rest of the world is doing, Japan and some of our other countries are doing in science and are doing in mathematics, and they're excelling. Don't they have these problems with standards like we do? I don't see them changing things, and a lot of talk about how, well, this shifts and that shifts, and we've taught to this, we've taught to that. I just have a hard time understanding these type of tests, who comes up with these things, and in the meantime, why aren't we just teaching our children good, solid courses, such as science, such as English, such as math. Those things haven't changed over our lifetimes, and I'm just concerned about that. So I know what you're saying, Richard.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying. It's just that if I look puzzled, it's because I just don't understand why we teach in that type of a focus.
Well, I think one of the things that's happened, and we've talked before about 21st century education, we live in a world that is different from the world that I grew up in, which was, for many of you, way before you were born. But, you know, the nature of science and technology has changed substantially. You walk down the street and everybody's got a cell phone or is in front of them. They're communicating on a regular basis. The technology is miniaturized. I often sit and wonder what it would be like to take somebody from 1950, plop them into today's world, and just watch them look around and say, my God, my car is talking to me and telling me when to turn right and when to turn left. My phone, keeps me in constant contact. The world has changed, and the nature of science has changed. One of the things which I brought today is just a very quick one page, which I'll hand out to you later, that talks about how the science is shifting. You'll notice in the new standards, there's a major focus on engineering. In the new standards, there's a major focus on deep critical thinking about science and not just memorizing a number of facts. I don't know about you, when I went to high school, I had a biology course. That biology book was probably about 900 pages long, and we spent the whole year studying and memorizing phylums and whatever else, which I don't even remember today. We recognize that data is readily available to people nowadays. If not through a computer, then I can just go on my phone immediately and I can get a lot of the factual information that I need. What I need is for kids to be able to take that factual information and to be able to use it, and sometimes be able to use it in new and creative ways. And that's what the new science standards focus on. So we're asking much more of kids than we did in the past. We're not asking them to just memorize information, give it on a test, and then forget it 2 weeks later. We're asking them to be able to find information, be able to analyze it, be able to synthesize it, be able to use it in new and creative ways, because these are the engineers and scientists of the future, and that's what we're really looking for. And that's what the new standards call for. These are very, very demanding science standards. I don't know how they match up against some of the other countries in the world. My guess is we're probably coming closer to what they've been doing all along. I know in math in countries like Singapore and Japan, that was the case. As the new standards came in, we actually became much closer to what was being done in those countries. But anyway, I digress. You're welcome.
If I may, again, thank you to the board for having approved what we've been referring to as the 6 C's, the 21st Century Learning Standards, which include the critical thinking, the collaboration, the communication, innovation, all of which are positioning our students for the future, as Rich has been describing. The issue here is that the test hasn't quite caught up with that definition of the future yet. I'll also mention, I do remember, might have been last year or the year before, the board did look at and was presented with Pomperaug High School's participation in the PISA test. PISA is an international test in which Pomperaug High School was positioned very, very favorably against the other countries taking the test. So just a little flash from the past.
Rich, did you have any information on whether the number of students in the advanced category has changed significantly?
The percentage has changed, which you can see.
Well, the percentage has changed,
And-
but I'm wondering how many students that represents.
I have that data. I don't have that data in front of me. I know that the size of our elementary grades has gone down somewhat. So you probably saw some decline in numbers. I don't know that it would be that significant that that alone would account for a major shift at all, though. We do have to keep in mind, as you compare one year to the next, you're comparing different populations. So, you know, from year to year, you will see variation no matter what, just because of, you know, the nature of the different grade levels that are coming through.
And do you feel that the drift between the curriculum not aligned to the test gets wider as each year goes by? Would that account for some of the change
Oh, I
here?
think that's why you've seen a fairly steady decline, not only in ours, but in the state and the DERGs, because I think as we have made adjustments in our program, and we have many more to make, the standards, remember, were just formally adopted last month. So as you begin to make more changes, this particular test is more out of date with what we are doing.
Okay.
The state itself knows that, and knows that over the next couple of years, they need to make some substantial changes, but it's taken a while for them to come to agreement on these new frameworks and standards, so they couldn't start looking at a change in test until they had approved the standards themselves.
Mr. Gussenberg?
Yes.
Just a quick question. I definitely sense the frustration on, you know, as Paul mentioned, and as you're saying that the test does not match up with what we've been teaching. So, and I do understand that the weight of this is not as heavy as it used to be in years past. So how do we know how students are doing in science as a district? How do we know how our students are doing?
Well, what we do know is that in the units that we give, we have regular assessments that are done by the teachers. We also, in the past, were giving end-of-year tests at the elementary level. Those Kelly stopped doing at the end of last year because, again, they started to get out of alignment with our curriculum and our program. So we're going to need to be, over the next couple of years, not only revising curriculum, but revising some of our internal assessments. Middle school and high school assessments, as they've revised curriculum and program, they've revised assessments. Teachers, administrators inform me that the students are doing very well. We don't have good collected data at a regional level at this point in time, not in the area of science.
Then, I'm sorry, Regina?
Thank you. But just to add to that also, in line with the board having approved that the 6 Cs, part of that effort also is to develop ongoing assessments to assess how does critical thinking, what does it look like in the various content areas? How do we know that our students are thinking critically, are acting innovatively, are communicating their scientific thinking? So that all is work in progress to which the board is committed, and I thank you for that.
So 2016-17 school year, science comes up for its every 5-year cycle of review, correct? It's not the
I
year we're in?
actually believe that it was supposed to be in the
Oh, my own.
2017-18
Oh,
year.
2 years to go.
But I'm looking, well, actually, what was supposed to happen is it was supposed to be this year, and social studies was supposed to be in 2 years from now. Kelly felt, not knowing when the state of Connecticut was going to approve the standards, she didn't want the committee to be going through a lot of work analyzing and changing program, only to have the standards approved after the work was done and have to go back and redo things. So she flipped on the 5-year plan, science and social studies. So social studies is being reviewed now. Science was planned to be reviewed in 2 years from now. I'm looking at making a change to that so that it gets moved up a year, since we now have those standards in hand, and therefore we would focus very heavily next year in a K-12 review of the entire science program.
So then the drift that's occurred now, where we talk about, well, we've already started switching towards these new standards, that's happened just with the normal, because I understand that curriculum changes aren't stagnant. You're constantly in a process of assessing and reviewing and rewriting. So we've had that much in the past couple of years, interim changes where the curriculum has already drifted towards the standards enough?
Not just the formal curriculum, but the day-to-day activities that are being done. Much more in the way of real hands-on, deep thinking activities that are going on. And so there's been a lot of shift by the science teachers as they're planning their lessons, often still within many of the units that had been in place. We still need to do that new K through 12 look based on the new standards, and in some cases, units will be dropped and new units will be added in. There'll be a larger change that'll take place as part of that, but the instructional methodology and techniques that are going on in the classrooms have been shifting all along. One of the greatest strengths of going to something like the block scheduling was that it allowed that kind of very, very active, deep thinking activities, which often can't be done in a 40-minute class. Many of, and the form that the paper that I'll pass out to you talks about even some of the labs and things and how those have changed, so that in the past labs were fairly prescribed, and the responses and the answers that you were going to get from a lab were fairly prescribed, and now they've become much more open-ended as you're looking for kids to really do some deep analysis of data and information and use the labs integral to what's going on. It's not just a side activity, it's now very integral to the class, and that's a strength of the block scheduling, that you can now integrate those labs on a regular basis.
Thank you.
Just one question. So I'm kind of hearing what you're saying, that the everyday classroom activity is closer to the standards than where the state is with the testing.
Definitely. That's exactly it. Thank you, John. I appreciate that.
So, if I recall correctly, student assessment of achievement is factored into teacher evaluation. So
Not in the way you're
how-
thinking. The teacher evaluation program has the teachers writing what are called SLOs, which are goals that they do each year. Those goals can be in a variety of areas. They may not be in science. They may be in reading achievement or math achievement. Depends on the teacher and their administrator and what they focus on. That gets plugged in as 45% of their evaluation. 40% of their evaluation is based on observations. And there was a piece that was supposed to be implemented called an SPI, which is based on standardized testing. The state has held off on that piece because of the fact that the Smarter Balance testing was still in development. They have a group working right now, taking a look at that, and part of their discussion is whether Smarter Balance alone should be part of an SPI calculation, or whether there should be a variety of things that are looked at, like attendance and a lot of other things that you collect data on. So that piece is still out there, and at the moment is not part of the evaluation of administrators or teachers.
So are we using internal assessments of student achievement
When,
for that piece?
for the SLOs, we're using internal assessments. So a student or a teacher doing something in the area of reading might use pre and post assessments based on the DRA assessments. Last year, when I was principal at Longmeadow, we had assessments that were, or SLOs that were written in the area of writing, and the teachers used the writing out of the Teachers College rubrics. that we then had students write, score those rubrics, and use those as pre and post analysis. And the state actually encourages that because they feel that you need ongoing data to really measure the growth of your SLOs. Whereas something like the SPAC scores, you get only once a year. And it's very hard to measure the progress that you're making. By using our internal data, we're able to get pre-scores, mid-year scores, end-of-the-year scores, graph those out, and watch to see how the progress on the various goals are really, having an effect on students.
So how would that help us look at science?
Well,
More realistically than perhaps instead.
yeah, at the moment, we would need to, and that's one of the things that we're working on this year, we need to develop some new assessments in the area of science. Remember, these standards were approved last month, so we haven't really spent a lot of time focusing on developing new assessments in the area of science, but developing rubrics in areas like critical thinking, and as we develop new curriculum, and this would be part of a study that would be done next year if we're going to be taking the science curriculum and doing a complete analysis of it and then reworking our curriculum. Part of that process is also developing the assessments to measure that new curriculum. So that's work to be done. And there's no easy, quick way to get around that. I asked at our Education Connection meeting the other day, I said, you got 160-something towns out there. The state's come up with new frameworks, and now 160-something curriculum directors and assistant superintendents are going to spend thousands of hours working with staff developing curriculum. So wouldn't it make sense for the state of Connecticut to put together a model curriculum, hand it to us, and then let us make some adjustments to it, and think of all the time and money we could save? And everyone around the table agreed, but I don't think that's going to happen. It would make sense. It would make sense to do that. But instead, all of my colleagues are out there in the same position we're in. They're all pulling together committees over the next year or so and reviewing their programs, and we'll spend a fair amount of time readjusting them to meet new standards with probably a new science, CMT, or CAP test coming down the line. So I don't know if you want me to run through the rest of the slides. You have the slides in front of you. These are the 8th grade numbers. We had 78.2% of our students score at goal or above. And on the advanced side, we had 23.5% of our students score at the advanced in 8th grade. In 10th grade, we had 70.2% of our students score at goal or above. And in the advanced area, 45.2%.
Do you have a theory about why the 10th grade CAP data seems to hold up pretty consistently as opposed to the?
CAP is a different test, and part of CAP has been a little more consistent with what the new standards are all along. It's had students do some activities within that test, which is more consistent with some of the changes that are taking place. I also think, well, I'm not going to say what I was going to. I think at the high school level you have a much more focused science program than, for instance, at the elementary level, where, as I said, I think that due to time constraints and other demands, science often doesn't get quite the time and focus that maybe it used to. Whereas that clearly is not an issue at the high school level. Madam Chairman, it's all yours.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Rich. Comments from citizens? There doesn't seem to be any questions, comments. We have no old business. Under new business requiring board actions, I need a motion, approval of the Board of Education goals. Is there a second? Do you want to read those?
Sure.
Yep.
Move that the Board of Education approves the following goals. 1, the Pomperaug Regional School District of Education will improve its effectiveness and efficiency by June 30th, 2016. And 2, student achievement will be the basis for all decisions of the Pomperaug Regional School District of Education by June 30th, 2016.
Okay, Jennifer seconded that. Is there any discussion? Okay, there being none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Okay. Did you get that, Gretchen? Okay, thank you. I need approval of the Board of Education norms. Could somebody
motion?
read that?
I can read it.
Okay.
I mean, I don't have my glasses, but I'll move along. Move that the Board of Education approves the following norms. We'll always strive to focus on the needs of students as a guide for decision-making. The board will respect the chain of command within the board itself. Individuals who bring questions or concerns and issues to a Board of Education member will be directed to follow the appropriate chain of command. Board of Education meetings will be relevant and meaningfully focused on student achievement. We shall respect our complementary roles and responsibilities. We shall continually monitor the board's performance, processes, and progress. We shall serve as models of positive, professional, and ethical conduct. We shall strive to reach consensus, and we shall deliberate in many voices, but govern in one.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay. I want to thank the board for getting this through tonight. We have worked, with, I think, 3 workshops, and a lot of hard work went into it, and I really appreciate all the help. And I'd like to thank Sharon and Marianne and John for working up the board norms. We kind of, we all had input into it, but they had a special committee meeting and made everything make sense. So I thank them. Okay, announcement of future meetings. Monday, December 7th, well, that was canceled, okay? It'll be changed. On Monday, the December 7th Board of Education meeting will be here in the all-purpose room, but it will be held at 8 o'clock instead of 7:30. So please take note because of scheduling conflicts. And on Wednesdays, December 9th, the Finance and Facilities Committee will meet at Central Office at 5 o'clock. 5:30. Thank you, Paul. I also need new glasses. For those that are traveling this weekend, I wish you a safe trip, and I wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
We were going to go into executive session.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Those glasses were really...
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I need a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of a confidential student matter.
So moved.
Is there a second? Oh, second? Did you second it, John?
I didn't second it.
Okay. Whoever. All those in favor?
Madam Chair, there'll be no action coming out of that.
There'll be no action. And who is invited? Everybody sitting at this table?
Yep.
Okay.